morning.
Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Fantastic. Good morning, family, friends, colleagues, acquaintances, boys and girls. Welcome to Longreef Golf Club this Sunday, the 10th of November. It's funny, I took down to see who it was. I am Elaine's brother-in-law, Greg Lucas, and I'll be your unofficial and unregistered celebrant today. A big welcome and thank you to you all from Elaine's godmother, Auntie Honey, who's come from Holland, 16,700 kilometres away, to Ellen, Aaron and Jared, 4.5 kilometres away in Narrowena, and everyone in between. You will make it a special day. I've been told in the last week that Elaine had two desires. The first one was to get out of hospital, to get home with her family and dogs, which did not occur. The other was to be cremated near her home of Bribie Island and to have a party in Sydney. And here we are today to realise her wish. To celebrate, her sister Wendy and husband Tony will be up to give us some insight and stories, as well as two videos of the evolution from baby to a mother of two, Charlie and Neo. When I first tried to think of a memory of Elaine, the words come out, "You're just an arsehole," followed by, "You're not that good," and "You're not that funny," and most probably in that order. When I thought a bit harder, I come up with a very memorable event. Many years ago at a party, when Charlie was very young, I gave him some beer, which he seemed to enjoy. I was delighted with the response, and that was Elaine was speechless. And for those that know her, it's a very hard thing to do. But after the initial wore off, she hit me with both barrels. Who do you think you are giving my son alcohol? It's not the role model I need for my children, and you have no right. This made me smile a bit more. And maybe that's where I got the first thought, "You're just an arsehole." We've relived this story many times over the years, and Elaine's come back with a different view, and that was I was only being myself, and that she was being a bit silly with her reactions, but we always laughed about it. As you may be aware, Elaine died on her 47th birthday on the 2nd of October. Interesting enough, this gave a combined age of the two sisters of 100 years. So I'd like to now invite up the other half of the 100-year partnership, Elaine's sister, Wendy.
Well, thank you. I feel very old now. So today, we celebrate the life of a truly amazing person, Elaine. A beautiful, sensitive and vibrant daughter and daughter-in-law, a cheeky and fun-loving sister, a true and loyal friend, a fierce advocate for the downtrodden, but above all, a deeply loving and supportive wife, and a nurturing, protective and very streetwise mother. Elaine's life is a colourful palette. Daubs of soft pastels, rich hues of hot pinks, velvet, amber and gold, stabs of red and black, dark patches of charcoal navies and violet, and swirls of aquas, turquoise and jade. As we reflect on Elaine's life, you will begin to understand the meaning of that metaphor. I actually vividly remember the day that I found out that Elaine was born. It was a clear, crisp autumn morning in Holland, and I rushed off to school to tell my news. She had arrived the evening before, on the 2nd of October 1972, and for me, at the age of 6, her birth was a long anticipated event, because finally, I was so happy to have a real-life baby doll that I could play with, and she was beautiful. So from the time she was a baby, I would always stare at her perfect features. I listened to her hearty giggles, and her rambunctious laughter. I just cherished every time I gave her the bottle. We stared at each other intently, and these were the beginnings of a very special bond. Speaking about bottles, when Elaine was introduced to her first solids, Mum and Dad said that before the next spoonful was ready, her mouth was already wide open to experience this new taste sensation. There was no need for cajoling or hiding vegetables in her food. She loved it all. In her later years, food became a hobby. Well, actually, I thought it was an obsession. Tasting, researching, experimenting, cooking, photographing. I'm sure you've seen a few pictures on Facebook. She could cook up a storm with the barest of ingredients. You just had to be patient though, and drink a few wines, because she can't hurry up a finger-licking good meal. Okay, so back to the early years in Holland. We lived in a 3-bedroom apartment in The Hague, and then in 1974, we moved into a corner block townhouse in a place called Oud-Beijerland. It's a small village near Rotterdam. There she made friends with boys in the neighbourhood, and she loved being outdoors. Mum said she was a tomboy. There were many visits to her grandparents who adored her and cuddled her. Her fine features were admired everywhere. Whenever Mum and I walked to the shops with Elaine in the pram, it would take us ages to get anywhere. People on the street were instantly drawn to her stunning features, and we had to stop so many times. Her life was happy, and it was a rainbow of pastels. Elaine's resilience, sense of adventure and courage was evident also from an early age. When she was about 4, I had this new bike, and she pestered me for weeks to let her ride my bike. It was relentless. So in the end, I gave in. She had never ridden a big bike before without training wheels, but because she was quite tall for her age, well, I thought it would be okay. So picture a corner block house with a long straight footpath that went past many blocks of other townhouses. So I put her on the bike, her toes barely touching the ground. I told her to put her feet on the pedals, firm grip on the handlebars, and push. I held on to her, and after a few minutes, she got the hang of it. So I let go, yelling after her just to keep paddling and just keep looking straight ahead. And with that, I turned around feeling quite satisfied and went back playing with my friends. Not long after, Mum came out asking about Elaine's whereabouts. And when I explained, well, I can still remember Mum storming up that footpath, yelling a string of not very nice words to me. Elaine recalled that day too. We laughed about it actually. She said that for a few minutes that feeling was totally exhilarating. But I did forget to tell her one little thing, and that was to brake. So she did what she always did from then on. She fell down, but she got right back up. Her time in Holland was short, but she had a deep connection with her heritage. We immigrated to Australia, arriving on the 2nd of July 1977, and she was 4 years and 9 months exactly. And as a family, we immersed ourselves into our new life. To digress for just a moment, Elaine's literacy skills and command of the English language never ceased to surprise me. It far surpasses ours, both in eloquence and profanities. She often used complex words that I don't even know the meaning of, and I'm a teacher. And she was not shy to state her opinion in a language that would make most of us blush. Yet her grip of the Dutch language was also surprisingly good. She knew and she respected where her roots came from. It was so lovely to see her reconnect with her family from Holland, especially through Facebook. With her godmother Aunt Honey, who's here with us today, we had a wonderful holiday last December in Cairns. We visited the Great Barrier Reef and we snorkeled in the shallow reefs off the Green Island. And she also loved showing her Dutch cousins and their families around in 2014, and even as recent as August this year. And she absolutely loved every minute of that. Okay, so back to when we arrived in Australia. Sorry for the turnaround. We lived in this place called the Endeavour Hostel in South Coogee, and it was a place where migrants could stay for a short period of time whilst they found their feet and a place to settle. It was a time when she was carefree and happy, enjoying the warmth of the Australian sun and wide open outdoor spaces. Her life resembled rich hues of velvet, amber and gold. We moved to a new home in Narrowena, just up the road from here. It was January of 1978 when Elaine was 5. It became a time when her life experiences, while still happy, started to at times also become just a tiny bit murky. So she enjoyed many different hobbies as she was growing up: horse riding around Belrose, dancing, martial arts, netball, piano lessons, and she was an avid reader. From my perspective, when she reached puberty, I saw her blossom into a beautiful young woman. For me, actually, this was quite annoying because all of a sudden we were the same height. So when I wanted to wear one of my new outfits, lo and behold, it was missing. Elaine loved sneaking into my room and wearing my clothes. But what annoyed me even more was that those same clothes looked infinitely better on her than they did on me. I remember on my 21st birthday party, many of my friends actually hadn't met Elaine. I wore a red dress, which I thought was, standoutish, and I gave her my white dress. And she'd just come back from a camp, and she was as brown as a berry. When she finally emerged at the party, mouths dropped to the floor, and all my male friends came running up to me asking, "Who's that girl in that white dress?" And when I said that was my sister Elaine, they were just absolutely gobsmacked. Many actually asked her, "Where have you been hiding?" At the time, though, Elaine was 14, and she told me later that she actually had quite low self-esteem, and she didn't really know how to react to that. I hoped it provided her with some of the acknowledgement and admiration she deserved. However, I realised that I didn't have much of an idea about what was going on in her childhood and teenage life. So Elaine started kindergarten at St John the Baptist Catholic School in 1978. It was the only year our school years actually overlapped. She was quite misunderstood by her teachers. She was still learning English, and her non-responses were seen as being defiant and troublesome. She was often sent to the naughty corner and disciplined. And whilst I was there for her, in hindsight, I wish I was more supportive, as I actually did not understand the difficulties that she would continue to face during her school years thereafter. She attended Beacon Hill High School in 1985, and it was the year that after I graduated in Year 12. Unfortunately, these years were extremely challenging for her. The effects of the White Australia policies were still felt. Racial prejudices because of the colour of her skin and jealousies of her natural beauty saw actually her to be a victim of quite horrendous bullying, which affected her for many years to come. It actually meant that she left school, I think it was before she finished Year 10 in 1988, but she may have finished, I'm not quite sure. She held a string of retail jobs in women's fashion in those mid-teenage years, but her life palette actually became a bit dark. Combine this with a desire to embark on a modelling career and do a portfolio in which she looks absolutely beautiful, only to be told that she had to lose more weight. Despite that, she found the strength, though, to complete her education, and she went to TAFE and completed her high school certificate. There she met her most amazing friend, Amanda, with whom she shares a very special bond. Amanda, you were the beginning of a new chapter for her, a true friend in whom she found unwavering comfort and acceptance. I think life became a little brighter, so swirls of jade and turquoise. Elaine found a niche when she started working at the New Brighton Hotel in Manly, and there she was, the belle of the pub, and very successful in that career, in my mind, a high achiever. Although, as Toby will share with you, not without its dark moments. It was during the 90s when there was some distance between us, as I lived at home and focused on my career, and she lived in Manly finding her identity. And while success was mixed with angst and sadness, it also was a turning point in her life. Elaine met her wonderful friends, Heidi and Shay, who have stood by her through thick and thin. And that's when Elaine met the future love of her life, Toby. And that brings me to 1997. Greg and I were married and expecting our first child. Whilst Elaine had a number of boyfriends, when she introduced Toby, well, we met the unexpected. Elaine enjoyed surprising us. It was Christmas Day, and we hadn't seen her for a while, so she bounced up our doorstep with razor-short platinum blonde hair, introduced Toby, who sported a very out-there hairstyle. It had blue, pink, green, red colours, patterns shaved on one side, pointy bits, tattoos and piercings to boot. Well, you can imagine the looks on our faces. Once the initial shock wore off though, we found Toby to be a most happy, caring, sensitive young man who was obviously quite different from Elaine's previous boyfriends and totally besottedly in love with Elaine. And life was as sweet as roses. Toby, Mum, Dad and I are so grateful that you found each other. We have gained a wonderful son and brother-in-law, 2 amazing nephews, and we are grateful for the extended family that we have shared many good times with and hope to continue in the future with Margot, Chris and Paul and their families. Okay, another important part of Elaine is her love for animals. According to Elaine, a family is not complete without pets, especially dogs. Animals have been the great soother in her life, and she cared for all pets, all types of animals, like children. So after badgering Mum and Dad for a pet, they finally agreed and got her very first pet, a cat called Tessie. She cared for that cat like a baby, walking around with it in her dog prams, playing with it every spare second and never leaving it out of her sight. She had a way with all different types of animals. I must admit, I don't share her love for ferrets, a family of mice, or a rather large white rat with a long tail and beady red eyes. These animals were literally all over her, and she loved it. It made her feel good. So one day, this large white rat escaped into Mum's bedroom under the dressing table. And Mum and I were so scared to touch it, it literally freaked us out. I managed to get it into a shoebox after a long time, and I hurriedly just shoved it into her room and shut the door. When I relayed that story to her the next morning, she was all laughs and nonchalance, saying, "I don't know why you're so scared, look." And she picked up the rat and let it run all over her hair, everywhere, without flinching an eyelid. And that brings me to the last 20 years. In 1999, Elaine called me from Melbourne. She was in a Catholic women's refuge, alone. Her relationship with Toby at the time was off, and she told me that she was pregnant. In those years, there was no internet or mobile phone, so we had to try and find each other via the landline, which can be quite challenging. I was a new mum of a 1-year-old, and I felt very strongly then that she needed to stay with Greg, Aaron and myself. And after driving back to Byron Bay to talk with Toby, she came and lived with us for about 4 months. And Elaine and I became really close friends then. She helped me out looking after Aaron, and it gave her time to reflect and to practice some of those mothering skills that you really know nothing about until the baby arrives. And then I saw she was amazing with Aaron, and I knew she would be a wonderful mum. Gorgeous Charlie arrived, and some years later, the handsome Neo. So from that time on, we shared much in the trials and tribulations of raising our families. We came together in many family celebrations, and we had lots of good times together. The boys bear a special bond, which we consciously fostered and revelled in. And Elaine held a special spot in the heart for Jared after spending some one-to-one times with him when he was going through a tough patch. It was wonderful to see Elaine and Toby make a new life in Queensland in 2012. She made a wonderful home, and Mum, Dad and I are so very proud of her. She was forever grateful, and she sought to spoil us whenever we came to visit. It was really tough to see her struggle with her physical and mental health, but she always managed to find something good in each day. Life for her during these times was certainly a mixed palette, but she became an avid gamer. She created unique jewellery, which I wear with pride. She took up painting and loved exploring her creativity on the canvas. And she touched many people in cyberspace and in the real world. And I'm only really now scratching at the surface to learn about all her contributions to the lives of others. Throughout her life, she fought courageously, and her resilience when faced with much adversity is actually quite inspirational. Elaine, it is my aim to tell your story, as it offers so much hope and faith that I feel this energy is destined to remain, to comfort those in the future in their time of need. I'd like to share some words from Mum and some reflections from Dad. And these are Mum's words. My beautiful daughter Elaine, it is with pain in my heart that I have to say goodbye to you. But I'm grateful that you came into our lives. I love you so much, and I watched you grow over the years into a strong, courageous woman. I am so blessed to have my beautiful grandsons, and you have done such an amazing job of raising them. I have so many fond memories when I stayed with you. Our walks in the park, visits to museums, your delicious meals, just to name a few. And there is so much I want to say, but I cannot find the words to express them. But know this, you are a delightful daughter, and I will miss you immensely. Your cheeky voice, your beautiful smile, and loving hugs will stay with me forever. Be at peace, my darling. When I think about Elaine and the similarities between Dad and Elaine, they're actually strikingly obvious. They were both restless and always on the move. Dad has lived in well over 10 different locations, and Elaine has probably done the same and maybe more. They are both non-conformists. They don't want to do or be the same as everybody else, and hairstyles is really just one tiny example. And they are as stubborn as hell. Don't tell either of them they can't do something, because then they will do their utmost to prove you wrong or to do the opposite. They were both a bit rebellious. Dad marrying into another culture, moving to Australia, leaving his family behind. Elaine, tattoos, piercings, staying out late, bringing home different boys, and much more in the younger years, of course. They both love a fun time. I remember my mum and dad organising the most fun parties at our house in our homes in Holland and in Australia. And when Elaine felt well, being around Elaine was just plain fun. And one of Dad's happiest memories of Elaine is the day when he visited her in Manly. It was a warm, sunny day, and he describes them walking in a comfortable stroll along the Corso in Manly with their arms around each other's shoulders. He said that it felt very nice and natural, father and daughter in the moment, sharing a joke about what other people might think. I would like to conclude by sharing something powerful yet poignant. I actually recently looked up the meaning of the name Elaine. This was after she passed away. And what I found was very fitting, and it summarises her beauty and her personality. So according to the urbandictionary.com, the name Elaine I thought was very uncannily fitting. It says, Elaine, one of the most amazing people you will have the pleasure of meeting. Elaine's are typically nice and sweet and very caring towards others, while still being badass, who can stand up for herself should this situation call for it. Her beauty is mesmerising. She is cute and lovable, but also sexy at the same time. And one should consider themselves lucky if you end up dating an Elaine. And I think, Toby, you've known this from the moment you laid eyes on her. Finally, according to thebump.com, I can hear her giggling. The name Elaine is of Greek origin, meaning sun ray or shining light. It dawned on me then that my final words to her were, and I'm convinced that she heard me, I whispered to her, darling sweet Elaine, we love you. We are all good now. Go in peace. Go to the warmth of the sun. Go to the shining light. Thank you.